Welcome to Professor Ortlieb's Bluebook podcast, a series of podcasts designed to teach 1L students the basics of legal citation using the Bluebook. In the last episode, we learned how to form and abbreviate case names using Rule 10.2.1 and 10.2.2. This episode introduces Pincites and short-form citation under Rules 10.9 and 4.1, as well as Blue Pages Rules B4 and B10.2. You'll want to have a copy of your Blue Book in front of you as you watch this podcast. Thus far, our sites have given the reader the basic information to find the case that we used for our material, but cases can be large and our sites need to be more specific. We need to add Pincites or pinpoint pages to call our reader's attention to the specific location where we found the material that we are citing. Blue Pages Rule 10.2.1 provides some useful guidance for inserting Pincites. For a long-form citation, Pincites follow the first page of the case report, separated by a comma followed by a space. In this example from Cow v. Pig, you can find the Pincite at the arrow between the first page of the case and the jurisdiction and court parenthetical. This Pincite indicates that the cited material appears on a span of pages from 55 to 56. Finding the page numbers for your Pincites is easy when you're reading the case out of the reporter that you're citing, but we usually use Lexis or Westlaw printouts. So how will you find your page number? Take a look at this example from the Illinois case Cohen v. Smith as printed from Westlaw. This is what you see at the top of the page of your Westlaw print. The header is the key to figuring out where your page numbers are throughout the print. The first cite is for the Illinois Appellate Reports. Below the header line is the cite for the Northeastern Reporter and the Illinois Decisions Reporter. From this header, you can see that the case starts on page 1087 of the Illinois Appellate Reports, 329 of the Northeastern Reporter, and 873 of the Illinois Decisions. Now let's look further down in the printout. Down here, you can see a series of bulleted numbers preceded by stars. This is how Westlaw shows you the pagination of the different reporters. The first entry here is 2 stars followed by 331. This means that every time you see a double star followed by a number, that's a new page in the Northeastern Reporter. That single star followed by a 1088 shows that the single star is the pagination for the Illinois Appellate Reports. Since I know from T1 that I want to cite to the Northeastern Reporter for Illinois cases, I'll want to focus on the double star pages. Here's another example from further on in Cohen v. Smith. Here on this page, near this block quote, I found double star 333. This tells me that any information after this double star 333 and before double star 334 would require a Pincite to 333. Likewise, text before double star 333 refers back to page 332 of the Northeastern Reporter. So if I wanted to actually provide a Pincite to this language from de Longchamp, I would cite to page 333. Pincites are easy when the material appears on one page. You simply cite to the page that the material is on. But where the information spans 2 or more pages, you'll need to include the page span. Here's your crash course on citing to material on more than one page using Rule 3.2. If your pages are single digits, write the numbers out in full. For example, 5-6. Where your page numbers contain 3 or more digits, write the first in full and then retain only the numbers that change. So 199 to 200 would have the 2 full numbers because all of the numbers change. But generally, we're going to keep the 2 digits, the 10s and the 1s, in any page span. So we use 54-56. And even in 3 or more digits, retain the last 2 digits even if the 10s didn't change. Therefore, 104-106 becomes 104-06. Finally, don't omit a Pincite merely because the content you're citing appears on the first page of the case. When that happens, repeat the page number in the Pincite location. Now let's look at some short form cites. As you know from your reading, courts don't repeat the full citation of a source over and over and over again. Well, neither do lawyers in their memos or court documents. Rules 10.9 and 4.1, as well as Blue Pages Rule B10.2, will help us shorten our case cites using three basic forms. This is what I like to call Form 1. It could be considered the medium length form. You will use this form where you've cited the case in full, but have since cited some other cases or sources. You now want to cite that earlier case again. This format consists of a shortened case name, shortened reporter information, and no court jurisdiction parenthetical. Like the full cite name, the name should be underlined up to but not including the comma. The shortened case name is normally the first listed party. Where the party is common, like people, state, ACLU, governmental officials, common litigants, you'll use the second party. You may shorten the party's name as long as the result is not ambiguous. So imagine you had a case that involved the Gompers Tuberhead Potato Agricultural Cooperative Incorporated. You might just choose to use Gompers as the shortened form of the name. After giving the shortened name, you'll write the volume number and reporter name that you used in the long form cite. But instead of just listing the page number for the first page of the case, you'll write at, followed by a space, the pinpoint page, and a period. Cut the court, jurisdiction, and date parenthetical. The second short form is a slight variation on Format 1. You would use this form anywhere Format 1 would be appropriate, but where you've also mentioned the case name in the sentence you're providing a cite for. Look at this example. In Cow, the court noted that the defendant's conduct did not interfere with the proceedings. 297 Northeast 2nd at 56. Because I mentioned the name of the case in my sentence, I omitted it from my cite. Again, this form is appropriate where you've already cited the case in full earlier in the discussion, but you've cited other authorities since then. The third form is the id form. Id is used where the immediately preceding cite is to the same case. Note that the period in id is underlined. Id is only appropriate where the preceding cite contains only one authority. If your previous cite was to more than one case or source, the next cite cannot be an id. Where the preceding cite is not only to the same case but also to the same page number, the whole cite is id with no additional information. But where the page number changes, you will add a space, at, space, and page number followed by a period. If the preceding cite was for the same case but for a different opinion, for example, moving between the majority opinion and a concurring opinion, you'll include a parenthetical indicating whose opinion it is. In this first example, you're indicating that you're citing Judge McDonald's concurring opinion. In the second example, you're indicating that you're moving back into the majority opinion. You would include this parenthetical only when moving between opinions in a case. Let's do some exercises to reinforce the pin cite and short form rules that you've now learned. Let's generate the cite requested here. You'll want to pause this podcast until you've crafted your answer, then press play to see if you got it right. How'd you do? The answer is pretty simple. It's simply id at 10. The question gave you all the information you needed to generate the long form cite, but it didn't ask you for a long form. The question indicated that you cited this case in the previous sentence. Now you want to cite the material on page 10. Since you know that you've cited this case in full and the previous cite was to the same case, you can use this id form. Because the prior pin cite was to a different page, we do need to provide a new pin cite with this id. Therefore, the correct answer is id at 10. Finally, before moving on, double check your details. Make sure you underlined the period at the end of your id. Also, make sure you completed your cite with a period. Now let's try another exercise. Once again, pause this podcast until you've crafted your answer. This question actually has two acceptable answers, so let's break them down. The question told you that you cited the case previously, but you have since cited 4 other authorities. Therefore, you need to use the medium short form, which includes a shortened case name, volume and reporter information, followed by the pin site. So the correct case name here is either Horse and Buggy Inc. or Horse. Did you remember to abbreviate your case name as we learned in Lesson 3? You should have used the ampersand for and abbreviated incorporated. Alternatively, you could have just chosen to use horse as the question suggested. You should have followed your case name with a comma, space, 357 for the volume number, space, F period 3D, closed up with no spaces, space after that, at, space, 10, and then a period. Now, how would your cite in the previous question have been different if you had mentioned the name of the case in the sentence text? Remember, the answer is to simply cut off the case name in the cite. Again, you can't use an id form because your immediately preceding cite is to a different authority. You need to provide the medium form, but without the case name. Here's your final question. It's a challenge question that could be answered by reading your Bluebook rules. What would you do if you needed to use a short form, but a pin cite is inappropriate? That is, maybe you're citing the case for a principle that appears generally throughout the case and not on one case in particular, one page in particular. How would you cite that? The answer is to print the first page number of the case without the at pin cite. You've now completed Bluebook Lesson 4 and you're ready to complete Bluebook Exercise 4. You're also ready to tackle those cites in your memos. Please see me or your teaching assistant if you have any additional questions.